Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Marshall. I am the National Executive Director of APAPA, short for Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs. We are a grassroots nonprofit organization with 30 chapters across the country. Our mission is to empower Asian and Pacific Islander Americans through education, leadership, and active participation in civic and public affairs. We are honored to be one of the host organizations for this 2020 National Civic Leadership Forum. I'm very excited to moderate this important discussion on listening across the racial divide. In this session, I will be talking to 5 leaders from different ethnic minority groups who will be discussing their learnings on the interviews that we conducted with 4 victims of racial discrimination and violence, also from different ethnic minority groups. You can read up on the speakers' bios under the speakers page for this event, but I would like for them to have a quick introduction of themselves here with their names and titles and the organization they represent. So first we have Cynthia Choi.
Hi, thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this important dialogue. My name is Cynthia Che, and I'm the co-executive director of Chinese for Affirmative Action. And we're a community-based civil rights organization. And most recently formed Stop API Hate to address the rise in anti-Asian racism with our partners at Asian American Studies at SF State and APCON in LA. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And we have Betty Williams.
Hi, thank you so much, APAPA, for putting on this forum. My name is Betty Williams. I'm the president of the Greater Sacramento NAACP, a civil rights organization that's been in the Greater Sacramento for 104 years. I'm also the California and Hawaii State NAACP Compliance Chair, where in both organizations, we advocate on a daily basis for civil rights, and we become the voice for the voiceless when we are fighting for African Americans and minorities. Thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you. Welcome, Betty. She's one busy lady. She's also a very good friend of mine. Okay, next we have David Bernstein.
Hi there. My name is David Bernstein. I'm president and CEO of the Jewish Council for Public Affairs. We are the network hub of 125 local Jewish community relations councils and 16 national organizations. We build bridges to other ethnic and religious communities, and we do advocacy on behalf of the Jewish community. And it's really wonderful to be with you here today and all of my wonderful colleagues who I'm on the panel with.
Thank you, David. I know how busy you are today, so I appreciate you taking time to be with us. Next, we have Jose Ortiz.
Did you say Jose Perez?
No. Oh, yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you, Jose.
Not a problem, Jose Perez. I'm with Hispanics in Energy, and it's a national group that focuses on the inclusion of Latinos in the energy sector. And I also publish Latino Journal.
Jose is a dear, good friend for many years now. I've known him since when I was working for AT&T. So welcome, Jose.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have Sukaina.
Hi there, my name is Sukaina Hussain. I'm the Outreach Director for CARE in Central California. CARE is the Council on American Islamic Relations. We're the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. We have 5 offices in California. We work on protecting civil liberties, providing legal services, advocating for policies to help our communities. We do a lot of civic engagement and youth development work, and we're very glad to be in this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome all panelists and panelists. Here are the ground rules here. I will be showing you 2 short videos each from people outside your ethnic minority groups. At the end of each video, I will have questions for you. Please limit your answer to 1 minute in length to allow for any follow-up questions or comments from the other panelists, please. So now we're going to get started with Cynthia and Savante Clark. In this video, Cynthia was the person who did the interview. Can we have video number 2, please?
So, you know, at the end of the day, I paid the price for my agenda. And the price that I paid, you know, off the death of my brother, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Because I wouldn't wish nobody, this is a club nobody wants to be a part of. So, you know, the effects of the death of my brother, you know, yes, it thrown me into activism. It got me fighting for other communities. But at the end of the day, you know, I would do it. Stephon Clark Law is good. Fighting for the people is good. We have our own park now. That's good. But we would rather have Stephon Clark here. We want our brother here today. And if we can't get that, we want justice and accountability. You have to remember the cops who assassinated my brother in my grandmother's backyard still work the streets today, patrolling other grandmother's backyards. So we feel like the system failed us. We believe the crime did not fit the punishment. And Stephon was failed not just by the city of Sacramento and the police department, but by community leaders, by the rising rent, by politicians, by the church, by religious leaders, whatever you want to call it. The system failed Stephon as a whole, and not just the justice system.
Thank you. Just so that you know, the interview was conducted at the time when he was at the airport, so the sound wasn't as clear as we had wanted. But since Cynthia was the one that did the interview, I would like to have her reaction after hearing what Stevante said, and I just want to know whether or not, why do you think that Stevante feel that the community leaders and even churches, they have failed the African Americans in addition to our institutions?
So first I wanted to share for the viewers who don't know what actually happened is that Stevante lost his brother Stephon at the age of 22, who is a father of 2 children, you know, a son, a brother, in 2018, and he was unarmed and killed in his grandmother's backyard. So I want everybody to know that, and to also, you know, recognize that this is, you know, an ongoing issue of unarmed Black men being killed by the police. And so what I heard from Stevante was trauma that his family has endured, and a generation of his family members who've endured this trauma. And so one of the things that I think about when he says the community has failed, the system has failed, is obviously the criminal justice has failed his family because the police that were responsible have never been held accountable for killing his brother, shooting him 20 times, 8 times in the back. And for the allegations that, you know, he had a weapon and so forth. And so this is being replayed over and over again. This is the conversation that we're having as a society. And I think that his disappointment with community leaders and elected officials and the faith community, I think speaks to the fact that there are times, especially in times of crisis, where we might not be in agreement about the solutions or what does justice look like. And right now we're at an opportunity to talk about that, whether it's defund the police, or as I like to say, refund and invest in the community to make our communities truly safe and whole.
Thank you, Cynthia. Let's watch the second video first. Could I have video number 5?
And it's unacceptable. And I'm sick of it. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We want 3 things: inclusive economic development for our communities, community sustainability, and curriculum reform when it comes to intellectual independence. That's it. You know, we could talk about universal basic income later. We could talk about reparations later. We could talk about the murder of Black people. We gotta talk about that now, okay? Because y'all gonna stop killing Black people. That's gonna stop.
Yeah. So Cynthia, what do you think of Stevante's call for economic development, community sustainability, and education for his community? In your experience, how often do you see victims of racial violence advocate for this kind of reform?
Well, first of all, I wish that everybody could see the whole interview. I mean, Stevante, you know, made his point very, very clear. First, before we can get to any of these longer term efforts to address structural inequality in our nation, we need to stop the killing of Black people. We need to embrace this idea that Black lives matter, and that is the starting place. That is the bare minimum of what we need to recognize as society. And this is really, this is for all of us. I mean, it takes away each of our humanity when we allow this to happen. So I want to start there. And I think Stevante articulated well that once we get to this issue of stopping the killing of Black people, we really need to address structural inequality through education, through economic opportunities, through our education system, so that we understand the history of racism in our country since the founding of this nation, and that it continues today. It permeates every aspect of society. And this is the work that's really before us today.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, definitely Black Lives Matter. And I would like to see if Betty would like to make some comments about this. Betty?
Yes, thank you. Because Black Lives is more than a saying, more than an organization, it's beyond that. And so what Stevante was saying basically is that there's no accountability when it comes to law enforcement. In the state of California, we have more excessive force issues than the entire nation. Within our own backyard, not one officer has ever been brought up on criminal charges. We need to see more of what's been happening since the death of Stephon Clark. And I've never seen as many officers fired as I have in this day and age. And so he's absolutely right. When it comes, we're tired of the killing of African-American men and women. And I don't want to not include the women. However, he's talking about his brother. And so when we as Black mothers, when many mothers are saying, I just want to see my child graduate from college with a degree, we are praying that our Black young men make it past 25 without being killed or imprisoned by police.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. Since we have you here, we're going to play the next video that is going to be talking about Henry Ortiz, and I would like Betty to comment on that. Henry Ortiz served 18 years in prison for manslaughter. He's on a mission now to give parolees and other ex-prisoners a chance in making it now. He's also trying to change a system that perpetuates the vicious cycle of incarcerating people of color. Can we play video number 11, please?
When you look at the history of how many white presidents have we had in our country? How many Black presidents? How many Asians, if that? How many Latinos with the amount of people that we have? And why has it been that way? So people really need to evaluate those questions, really see what's going on, and hold each other accountable, hold our government accountable for saying, you know what, this is a little too much. And I think and there's been a lot of brainwashing, war on drugs, tough on crime. These were all, things that were put out by Reagan, by Clinton, by different presidents. I don't want to get too political with it, right? But these messages that were installed fear, that took some of the most horrible crimes and exploited that crime to manipulate the masses, like everybody is a monster, like this person that just committed this monstrous act.
Yeah, so brown and blacks are portrayed as monster. That's the message. So Betty, do you think Henry have a point? Can you
Yeah,
speak on the demonization of certain ethnic groups, several, subtle or otherwise, in politics and in policy making?
he absolutely has a point. There needs to be, again, more accountability. And even the imagery that he speaks of when it comes to black and brown, the negative imagery in the media, print media, social media, of what we or how we're portrayed, it gives a indication to the rest of society, we are bad people. You don't want to walk next to those individuals. And so when you have a school district in California or just locally where our expulsion and suspension rate is higher than LA County, which is the largest county in the state of California, and the #1 suspension is African American males. And so we need to do something to stop that. When our prisons in California is based upon the scores of 3rd graders, we need to change those policies in order to stop the the pipeline to prison piece. So when you are at a different standard than your white counterparts, such as you passing a note where if you're white, you get counseled, you get educated, don't do that again. Where if you're black or brown, you're getting somewhere between a 3 to 5 day suspension, which takes you out of the classroom, which actually suppresses your education. And so, which takes you to the prison pipeline. And one more thing with that, I just have to say, they'll call the police before they'll call the principal when it comes to black and brown kids. And in my day, you go to the principal's office, get counsel, go back. But in today's society, the police is the first tool that they use on their tool belt. And so people that look like me and like Henry, we end up, and our children end up in prison. So he absolutely has a point.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully at the end we can circle back and allow more questions on the topics, but I just want to make sure that each of the panelists has at least 10 minutes to talk about the case that they learned. So we're going to have to move on to the next question, but I think I would like to ask Betty one more question first. Do you think Henry's expectation, well, I think let's watch the video. Can I have video number 15?
We've been collaborating. We've been leading the fight. We pushed the first police accountability bill after they killed Stephon Clark, right? And we got arrested after protesting of the injustice to try to mediate the violence between the cops and our people. And, you know, we filed a lawsuit. We held them accountable. So everybody needs to be held accountable on every level. If there's expectations about us as civilians, as people on parole, as community members, there also needs to be accountability on the system that governs us, the correctional system, the sheriff's department, the police department, the DA's department, our judges. We need to make sure that everybody's doing the best thing that's needed for our people, and it hasn't been done. We've been collaborating.
Yes, so everyone needs to be held accountable. Do you think Henry's expectation for accountability are reasonable, Betty?
Absolutely.
And if so, what are yours?
Absolutely, because one of the things that he says that really stuck out for me that a lot of people don't look at is the judges. And you have an election system, and we're in an election year where you're going to see on the ballot a number of judges to be elected by the people, right? But we hear more about individuals who are running for various county and council and those levels. We hear nothing about the judges, but yet those are the individuals that send our children to prison. And so we need to do a better job in selecting individuals that are sitting in judging seats for us, especially when they're sending us to jail. And we need to create more policy and support those legislators that have policies in place that will make sure that we are protected and that individuals in law enforcement that have consistent records of excessive force are removed from law enforcement. We need to be more conscious than just being in a political year when they show up at our churches and our organizations. We need to be consistent and get rid of those individuals that are not listening to our voices. He is absolutely on point on that.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. And for those who are listening, right now, even though we're not taking your questions, but if you have questions, please type it in the chat and we will collect them. And then depending on the time we have, we will address your questions there. Okay, thank you. So the next victim I would like to show here is about Yuan Yuan Chu. On March 9th of this year, Yuan Yuan Chu was threatened and spit on in broad daylight on a busy street in downtown San Francisco. F you, China, that's what, and yell her attacker. And then he also said, run them over. So Yuan Yuan is an artist in the exhibition manager, as the exhibition manager of the Chinese Cultural Museum in San Francisco. She immigrated to the US from China when she was 20 and had a very pristine and hopeful image of the US. Much of that has changed now. Let's watch the video number 7.
First of all, before I try to ask him why and try to understand him, I want him to know and understand this incident, how traumatic it is. The past several months, every time even I go out, I never felt safe anywhere. It just feel like any normal person can just beat on you and even beat you up or anything without taking any risk, responsibilities or anything. It's really traumatic. I want him to know that probably he has a family too. I hope him to, because he just look like a normal person. I won't tell him that just stop doing these horrible things, because you have no idea this random behavior you just act to someone that how huge of impact you can have in someone's life. But also, I don't know, I feel like if he didn't do that to me, he probably would do it to other people too, and I don't want these things to happen to any other people. And of course, I would never physically attack him or anything, but if he just stay here in front of me, I will try my best to help, to tell him what he did was wrong, and I want to know why he did that, and I want to try my best, anything I could, to change his mind.
Thank you. Now, before we go back to the beginning of the video, I just want to have a question for David. I would like to have David's reactions on this video because I want to know what David thinks about Yuan Yuan's message here and how he would like to handle it, any differently from what we just saw, and how David feel, whether or not he's seen victims like this in the community where, in the Jewish community where he's, the victim is really confronted the attacker.
Well, first of all, I reacted on a very personal level to this video. My wife, as you know, Yen, is Chinese, and I can easily imagine it being her or my stepkids who are Chinese American, and that would be, to me, horrible, horrendous. And so I relate to it on a very personal level. Very early on in the pandemic, we started to see these truly frightening manifestations of xenophobia targeting Asian Americans and Chinese Americans. And it's very important for us all to stand in solidarity and to make sure that Asian Americans felt safe and protected. Maybe many Asian Americans didn't feel like they were part of the victim class of America, and they needed to be told that when you are targeted, we have your backs. We are not going to allow others to victimize you in this way. But one other point I just want to make quickly, and that is that, you know, she's not just a victim. She is, I was so impressed with her insight, her strength, and her humanity. So even as we acknowledge the victimization of people, I hope we don't lose sight of the beauty that they bring and the cultures that they represent, so that we can focus on that as well.
Thank you, David. And I know your organization has collaborate with us, you know, on various cases where, you know, where we really stand in solidarity with other ethnic minority groups. So really appreciate the collaboration there. Now let's go on to, since I have David here, let's play video number 10.
I study like contemporary art and fine arts in graduate school. So personally, I've been involved in different like social issues and a lot. But to be honest, for like older generation, those Chinese Americans or like Chinese people like here, they don't like, they kind of like, I can't speak for all of them, but like some people that I know, they just live in their inner circle. They don't really like pay attention to like other races or like those social issues. I think that's, you know, like a general thing for most like people. They just live their lives. They don't really care about like other races, because why would they, right? Because if they don't really get hurt, like personally, lots of people won't say anything to like help or like protect other people, because it's not their like business.
Yeah, so older Chinese Americans seem to stay silent here. So David, what are your impressions of the Chinese community in terms of their involvement in racial issues, vis-a-vis, you know, generational lines and different Chinese subcultures?
Sure.
How does it compare with other, you know, ethnic communities?
Well, first of all, I think we see intergenerational tensions and differences in every one of our communities. I'm the child of an immigrant myself. My mom is from Baghdad, Iraq. She's Jewish from Baghdad, Iraq. Some of the attitudes that she brings with her from her home country or that she's brought to these shores are different than the social and political attitudes that I have. And sometimes it's a source of tension between us. But what I try to remember is, listen, their experiences are their experiences. And what we can do is take the best from them. We can take that rich cultural heritage that they bring. We can ignore some of their tendencies that we might not always appreciate. And we can impart to our children a combination of the beauty that they bring, the culture that they bring, and some of our more inclusive sensibilities, so that our children can be both connected but also appreciative of what their grandparents were, and yet have a new understanding of the way the world works.
Yeah, thank you, David. As you know, I'm Chinese. I was born and raised in Vietnam, but truly appreciate your insight there. Now let's, on the same cases here, I would like to play video number 7 now, so that I can get some reaction from Jose.
So I was on my way to the gym. It's like in the kind of city center in San Francisco. And there was this person. So he's a Caucasian, like 6 feet tall, looks really normal, just like people, just look like normal people. When I just got off the car, he saw me. And the first thing he said to me was, "Fuck China." And he said that to me, and I was a little bit confused, but you know, this is America, anything can happen at any point. And there was this bus driving slowly passing by us, and the second thing he said, shout really loud. I think the whole block can, you know, help him. He said, run over them. And at that time, I kind of realized that, oh, based on the two things he said, and that's like beginning of March. And that's around the same time when the president of this nation called that virus Chinese virus. So lots of people are really angry just based on no reason. I was just stuck there waiting for the traffic light, and he was just right next to me. I looked back at him, and he looked like he's about to speed on me. And I told him, like, I was really calm. I just told him, I said, please don't. And right after I said that, he speed on me. And I just ran faster, get across the street and get into the gym. So before I entering the gym, there was like three people who happened to be Asian America. They asked me, oh, are you okay? Did that guy just speed on you? I said, I'm fine, which apparently I was not, but I couldn't really physically do anything to that person. And he was kind of like waiting for my reaction. So my choice, like I chose to just get into the gym.
So Jose, have you ever been harassed and spit upon in this manner? What would you do if it happened to you? I mean, she talked about her situation there, but I'm just curious on, you know, from a different perspective, from a male perspective.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, after looking at the videos, I totally agree with David, who expressed the emotional impact of what happens when someone basically disrespects someone else, another human being, because of their background, their ancestry, their racial makeup. And, you know, it's very disheartening that it definitely exists in our society. And America is very different. It's not like other countries where they're pretty homogeneous. In America, we draw people from all over the world, and they bring their language, their culture, their religion, their value systems. And I think America is definitely going through an adjustment period, and the part of that adjustment period is not beautiful. And you know, all the testimonials that you've heard right now, I think are so true. And that is that our society is struggling with how to accommodate our differences. And so it's a question of, you know, how do we do that? You know, if I had the solution, I probably would open up a consulting company, but I don't have the solutions. I think that some of the thoughts that have been shared here by the other speakers, you know, are very well warranted. They ought to all be seriously considered. And but in this particular case, you know, I too am married to a Chinese woman, and I too have heard, you know, the comments about the China virus and what the implications are of that. And I can tell you that my family is offended by that. And so, you know, but there are folks who believe that, and they go around and they do things like that, but I've never been spit on. And I you know, being a guy, I, you know, probably would have handled it differently. It would not have been a nice scene. And so, but you know, it's really unfortunate that we do have people like that. Hopefully the things that we come up with in terms of solutions to overcome these kinds of experiences, you know, are found very soon, because, you know, we clearly ought to respect all human beings, no matter where they come from, what their language is, what their beliefs are, and try to accommodate them in our society. And I think that's going to be eventually our strength. It won't be our weakness. It'll be something that'll make this country very strong.
Thank you, Jose. Let's, before we make any more comment, let's watch the last video for this number 9, please.
I think there are lots of reasons for this incident specifically. I think totally because first of all, people are angry. You know, even those normal people that don't really like attack other people, I think probably they're just really angry because since COVID case was skyrocket and people got started to get restricted out there, like daily life, they're kind of like shelter in place and stuff. They have those anger they want to just release. I don't know, things just.
So, Jose, I mean, Yuan Yuan has her reasons for this racial rage that she encountered. Do you agree with her observation? I mean, what more would you add to it? Why, I know you touched on it lightly earlier, why there is such resentment to the Chinese and Asians in general right now?
Well, I think, you know, besides COVID-19 and the perception of how it got over here, and if you look at the science behind it, that's not the way it happened. But that's another story. I think that the Asian community, you know, in many ways, it gets extra attention because of world affairs. You know, now with China becoming a stronger economic power, I think that there's some resentment that, you know, the United States is no longer going to be number one, and there's a lot of financial economic issues behind that. And in addition to that, there's, again, a lot of language and, you know, cultural issues. In our family, the things that we find a lot in common, you know, between Latinos and Asians, for example, is the closeness of family, the support of our elders. We respect our elders. And there's a lot of differences that other communities, you know, they manage it differently. But that doesn't make them wrong, it just makes them different. And so, you know, how we get to control rage, you know, you got to be pretty exceptional. And it does build hatred, I think, initially. But what we got to discover is that not everyone from that community that offended her like that are like that. And I think that they're clearly the minority. I happen to believe that people are basically good. And so, but some people are not. And she's experienced that, and hopefully her rage won't make her so concerned and that she says the whole community is negative. And I don't think that's accurate. But you know, everybody has to make their own judgments on how they perceive these things and how they manage it. But you know, I got to tell you, this to me is clearly an indication of overt racism, where somebody can do that out in the street in broad daylight. And then the way she's managed that is quite frankly very impressive. And so I think she's going to do well, but you know, that doesn't make it right. I think we still have really bad people around there, and it may happen again. And so you know, it's not a good thing. But I don't have the solution, but I think that you know, we definitely have to keep working at it and try to figure out the common bonds that keep human beings together and what makes us better by doing that versus focusing in on our differences and how we can hate each other.
Yep, and the experience, I am quite sure that it will stay with her for a lifetime, and
right.
Really unfortunate because she had so much hopes and had such a beautiful view of America before. You know, right. That's why she came here. So thank you, Jose. And since Cynthia, I know that Cynthia knows Yuan Yuan personally, so I would like her to make a short comment about this before we move on to our last case, please. Cynthia?
Yeah, Yuan Yuan is somebody that I met right when we were about to launch Stop API Hate, which tracks anti-Asian racism related to COVID. And hers is one of thousands of stories that we've received. There are some very violent cases, including the stabbing of an Asian family in Midlands, Texas. But a majority of the incidents are ones that Yuan Yuan experienced. And, you know, I will have to say that there's a direct link to the racist rhetoric of the Trump administration. In his attempts to blame China for the coronavirus and to deflect his own responsibility for his own epic failure in managing COVID, and his alliance and giving white nationalists a platform within his own administration, and all of the immigration policies that have come out of that to restrict, to blame, to criminalize our communities. So this is no accident. This is certainly not the first time that Asian Americans have experienced violence and hate. It's actually been since our migration to this country. That has been our experience. We have been pushed out, we've been lynched, we've been banned from this country. And this is all through legal, so-called legal action that our government has taken in the same ways that the Muslim community has experienced it pre 9/11 and certainly post 9/11. So we have to connect the dots. The policing, our schools, our education, our immigration system, our criminal justice system, they're all designed to do what they're effectively doing today. And that's what we really need to address.
Yes, Cynthia, thank you. I still remember how shocked I was to learn about the Chinese Exclusion Act. So I can totally understand what you're trying to to share here. Look like we are not going to be able to ask any more comments about this case. So I would like to give enough time for the next case first. So hopefully we can come back in case. I know there are a lot of questions about this case already. So the next case we have has to do with Nathan Lewin. His family escaped from Poland in 1939, right before the Nazis' invasion. With the help of Japanese Vice Consul Sugihara in Lithuania, his family secured visas to travel to Japan and eventually to the United States. 3 of his grandparents were killed by the Nazis. Mr. Lewin graduated from Harvard Law School and later served as Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. He has argued more than 28 cases in front of the Supreme Court. So this is a Holocaust survivor that had a very impressive background here. Can I have video number 16, please?
Well, my name is Yuan. I'm currently 84 years old. I was born in 1936 in Lodz, Poland. When I was 3 years old in September of 1939, Hitler's armies invaded Poland, and my parents, my mother had the good sense to say we have to leave immediately, and we did. Modeled across the border into Lithuania. I came to the city of Vilna, where my mother got the first of the very famous Sugihara visas issued by the Japanese consul and countess. And as a result of getting that visa, we were able to go from Vilnius to Moscow, from Moscow on Trans-Siberian Railroad to Japan, from Japan to come to the United States. And Consul Sugihara issued more than 2,000 visas, which saved more than 6,000 Jews who were escaping from Hitler and fled from Poland to Vilnius at that time. So I'm very thankful to the family of Consul Sugihara. And I think by now there are probably 100,000 Jewish souls who live because of the consul's kindness and his disobeying his foreign office's instruction not to issue such visas. So when you invited me to speak, or maybe to be interviewed on the question of consideration or thanks on a cross-racial basis, I agreed to do it precisely because my life and the life of my children and grandchildren is attributable to the kindness of Sugihara. Well, my name.
Wow, hats off to this Consul Sugihara. This was something that I totally did not know, and part of the such important history we had there. So I would like to ask Sukena, what is your reaction to Nathan's story, and what must have been Vice Consul Sugihara's state of mind in his desire and his decision to help the Jewish refugees fleeing Hitler's advance, while he was advancing the army?
Absolutely. So this story was absolutely fascinating. I'm really honored to be able to share my insight on it as well. I mean, to me, Consul Sugihara is a hero. He really put himself on the line. He put his safety on the line to help others who were facing, threats to their lives, who were facing violence. And, I think it demonstrates a couple of things. I think Consul Sugihara really demonstrated to us that sometimes you need to break the rules or disobey laws to do the right thing. Even in Nazi Germany, people who were protecting Jews and giving them safe shelter were breaking rules to do it. It was against the law to do that. During the time of segregation in our country, it was against the law to have rights that our Black communities deserve just as every other person in this country. When women were fighting for voting rights, or people of color were fighting for voting rights, they had to break laws to fight for justice. So I think that's a really important point that he highlights, is you need to break the rules sometimes because laws are not always just and don't serve all communities equally. I think Consul Sugihara also demonstrated what it means to use your power and privilege to serve others and lift up others. So for us today, whether it's an elected official, whether it's someone who has a seat at a decision-making table, it could be a school board or redistricting commission or police commission, whether it's people who have race privilege in this country, they really need to recognize the power they hold to support other communities and help communities who are the ones that are more deeply impacted, who are facing the oppression. And finally, I think Consul Sugihara really recognized the importance of movement and crossing borders for refugees and immigrants. He really saw that these visas were necessary to help these Jewish families find their safe way to be in Japan or to be in America, or find a place to safe place to go. In this case, it was the United States. And unfortunately, in our country, we have seen the Muslim ban, which has prevented communities from Muslim majority countries to come into this country. We've seen a sharp, drastic decline in refugees being able to be allowed into our country in this administration. We've seen the impact at the borders of, putting families in inhumane conditions in detention facilities where they are dying of poor sanitation, of disease, and children are separated from families because of limiting opportunities, limiting the access to borders, and really limiting refugees and immigrants from seeking safer opportunities in life. So definitely he was a courageous hero, and I appreciate him shedding light on these important lessons for us.
Yeah, thank you. I think this council really defined what courage means to, for all of us here. Let's, before getting more comments on this, can we play video number 18?
When your family was fleeing, you mentioned some of your grandparents were killed. Did your family know the extent of what was happening in the concentration camps and to the scale that they were really killing Jews? Did they have a sense of that, you think, or do you think that kind of came afterwards?
It's very interesting that you asked me that, because what happened was, as we were fleeing, of course, the enormity of what the Germans were doing was not known. But by the time we came to the United States in 1941, my father, who previously had known no English but was learning English, but he was a writer in Yiddish. He wrote Yiddish and Polish and Hebrew. He began, and when we came to the United States, he supported us by being a reporter for a Yiddish newspaper. And he was the first, literally the first, who wrote in the Yiddish newspapers about the terrible things that were being done to the Jews in Poland. He, as a matter of fact, the famous cable of a Jew by the name of Sternbuck, who sent a cable about the camps in which the Nazis were murdering Jews, was a cable that came to my father and to the man for whom he was working and with whom he was working, Jacob Rosenheim, who was the president of the Agudas Israel World Organization. And they tried to bring it to the attention of President Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt. They both ignored it. When they talked to, when my father met at that time, he was learning English, but he was learning how to get around in the United States. And he met with Rabbi Stephen Wise, who was then the leading Jew in the United States during the war and a friend of Roosevelt's. And Wise told him, shut up, don't report this publicly. Don't say anything about it. It's an extreme statement. We don't know whether it's true. My father said it was verified. Wise told him to keep quiet and not to disclose it. Well, 2 months after Wise gave that instruction, when the Jewish community in the United States was still keeping quiet about what was going on, my father wrote a lead article in Yiddish reporting on what had happened. He was really one of the first who countermanded, flouted Rabbi Wise's instruction, which had apparently been given by Roosevelt to Rabbi Wise. And he alerted the Jews of the United States to what was going on in the camps, in the supposed prison camps where Jews were being murdered. And in fact, in 1942, I think it was, the delegation of more than 400 Orthodox rabbis traveled at this time of the year, just even a little bit later, between the Jewish holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, between New Year and the holiest day in the Jewish year, by train to Washington to meet with Franklin Roosevelt and to tell him what was going on and demand that the United States take more active role. And Roosevelt, on the advice, unfortunately, of some Jewish advisors who he had, decided that to avoid that meeting. And they told him that, they told the rabbis that the president was not available. They tried to shunt him off on the vice president, who had no power at all. It's one of the most shameful episodes in the history of Franklin Roosevelt during the war, that when these 400 rabbis came to Washington on a train just shortly before Yom Kippur, the president refused to meet with them and ducked a meeting with them.
That was fascinating history we just heard. I know it was a little bit long there. My apology for that, but I thought, with hearing stories like that, we don't really, the elaboration isn't quite needed here. But I would like to, in looking at the time, I would like to have Sukaina answer just a very short question that I have here. How might history have been different, do you think, if the U.S. government acted earlier?
Yeah, so I think this story really emphasizes the need to share stories and listen to those who are impacted by violence. I think there's an echo happening somewhere. We today are able to honor stories of Holocaust survivors. We're able to honor the stories of those who are Japanese in internment camps, but there is continued violence like this continuing. We see up to 3 million Muslims in China who have been incarcerated, who have been interned and are being tortured, forced to do labor, who are being forced to give up their identities and their religion. We see genocide of people, Rohingyas in Burma. We hear reports today of women in an ICE facility in Georgia who are being forcibly sterilized. We've heard reports of that as well. So really what we're missing here is that understanding of making sure that the stories of those who are impacted, the violence that has occurred is taken very, very seriously. That, the stories we hear from those who have been in the internment camps, the Uyghur Muslims, that they are shared across the world, that our governments take action and they hold those countries accountable for their atrocities.
You're on mute, Yen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Sukaina. Before we're running out of time, so basically I couldn't take any more comments. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank the 4 courageous victims who shared their painful stories with us. And really, thanks to them, all of us have gained valuable insights into racial discrimination. It was truly an honor to learn from all of them. So secondly, I would like to thank my amazing panelists who took time to listen, reflect, and provide their insights. Our country is at a tipping point for change, and we can all agree that cross-cultural understanding is key to each minority group's success here. So I will continue to provide a similar platform through my organization, APAPA, on a regular basis so that leaders can continue the act of listening across the racial divide. So please, if you plan or want to participate on this panel in the future, or if you have a victim story you want to share, I would love to talk to you, so please contact me. Until then, let's continue to help each other and move onward and upward together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.